Hello everyone and welcome back to Let's Play The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask. In the last part, we accessed the interior of the moon and gave away all of our main masks. But we also got the last 4 heart pieces, so it all balanced out. And now, the plains here inside the moon are looking pretty empty. It's just us and the kid wearing Majora's mask. Your actions here do actively change the final boss a little bit in that we're going to get a new reward, but I'll talk more about the reward itself later. Everyone's gone away, haven't they? Will you play with me? Sure. You don't have any masks left, do you? Well, let's do something else. Let's play good guys against bad guys. Yeah, let's play that. We got the Fierce Deities mask. Could this mask's dark powers be as bad as Majora? Try it on with C. Are you ready? You're the bad guy, and when you're bad, you just run. That's fine, right? Well, shall we play? So the Fierce Deities mask is your ultimate reward for getting all the masks in the game. It is a super mode that can brutalize any boss fight in the game. I think it can even potentially 1 to 2 shot Dalwa in the right instances, but I'm not going to use it for this fight for appropriateness. In particular, we're gonna save it until the credits to show it off. Remember your battles. When something resistant would deflect your weapons, what was its backside usually like? So phase 1 against Majora's Mask here, we need to hit it with a light arrow in the back to stun it. You can also notably use the spin attack, but light arrows I think are better for distance, because in order to use the spin attack, it needs to actively attacking you with one of its attacks where it like spins itself and tries to run into you. It can also fire lasers out of its eyes, and towards the latter half or so of its health, it also pulls out a new trick involving our old friends on the walls. So now all 5 of the masks are running around, but you can easily kill them with 1 to 2 light arrows. Their main attacks, I think, are also to fire little projectiles at you or do little charges, but they die pretty quickly, so it's not the biggest threat. Using light arrows to stun Majora's Mask itself or take out any of its little options like this is why I always use the Chateau Romani from Madame Aroma as the last side quest, because it gives me infinite magic, so I don't need to worry about restocking using the pots around or running out, period. With that said, it's not exactly a hard fight. I think overall, Majora's Mask itself is one of the easiest final bosses in the series, no matter what you do, if you have less health, if you have less defense, if you only have half the magic, all that jazz. And part of it's probably just because there's so much in the game you can miss out on that they realized, okay, maybe we should at least balance it around having a minimum of 7 hearts for this, roughly. Like, I'd say the hardest 3D Zelda bosses or final bosses are, like, Skyward Swords, just in terms of execution. Twilight's just for that one phase near the end. And, honestly, that's probably about it. 3D Zelda doesn't really have hard fights. But at that point, it's mostly because you're there for the story, the atmosphere, and the spectacle of it. Because they usually do at least have that down pretty good and pat. Do enough damage, though, and phase 2 begins. So, phase 2 is a little wacky, in that when it's not actively attacking you, it is moonwalking, it does the Cossack to get around, it just dances all over the place. And it does try to fire some projectiles at you, particularly I think a laser. It can throw projectiles at you. It can try to just run into you and kick you and all that jazz. It's a wacky fight. I almost look at it as sort of a desperation form just because it's not ready to fight you, but at the same time, it's also like you're fighting, as we saw in the moon itself, like a personality of a child embodying a demon that's just not taking anything seriously at all, and I appreciate it for that aspect. But as you can see, again, light arrows make this pretty easy because you can just get out the Great Fairy Sword and go for mass damage very quickly. Majora's Wrath isn't that much harder, though, despite looking intense. It's got whips that it can use to throw you all over the place, and it can do some good damage pretty quickly, but light arrows stun it so effectively, it's not a real threat. This is even easier, though, with the Fierce Deities mask, believe it or not. But we'll show that off again in a few moments. Notably, there is a fan theory that the patterns on Majora's Wrath resemble fallopian tubes, and thus Majora itself might be female, which is kind of a neat idea. Personally, I like a little bit of a fan theory that sprouted out since Tears that kind of connects to the manga thing I brought up before, where Majora was a dragon, mostly resembling some iconography in Tears itself, but it's not very hard. Ah, he's awake! I really wish it wasn't, though. Oh, my head. You guys, you hadn't forgotten about me? You still thought of me as a friend? How you doing? Did you save me? I thought they didn't want to be friends with me. But they hadn't forgotten about me. Friends are a nice thing to have. Could you be my friend too? the same smell as the fairy kid who taught me that song in the woods. I know, let's do something. Oh, so the evil has left the mask after all. Where did you come from? Well now, I finally have it back. Since I'm in the midst of my travels, I must bid you farewell. Shouldn't you be returning home as well? Whenever there's a meeting, a parting is sure to follow. However, that parting need not last forever. Whether a parting be forever or merely for a short time, that is up to you. With that, please, excuse me. But my, you sure have managed to make quite a number of people happy. The masks you have are filled with happiness. This is truly a good happiness.
How did he do that?
Well, both of us have gotten what we were after, so this is where you and I part ways, isn't it? You know, it was kind of fun. Well, it's almost time for the carnival to begin. So why don't you just leave and go about your business? The rest of us have a carnival to go to. Sure thing. Take care of yourself. Link! Thank you. Gotta lead in with this. I adore the credits theme in this game. It's probably my second favorite song in the game, next to the Final Hour song, and it's the Indiegogo song, and that's such a good way to repurpose that. But that's Majora's Mask! I adore this game, if that wasn't immediately clear from how much I was just able to keep talking throughout this. This is my favorite 3D Zelda, period. In fact, it's my favorite Zelda overall. And I think a lot of that comes down to its very unique structure that no other game really has felt like it's matched in both tone and overall feel. Because Termina itself is so condensed, but there's so much to do in it. There's so many side quests, you feel like you're actually helping the people along the way, and each of the individual area stories you actively make an impact on in a way that it feels like you really don't in some other Zelda games or adventure games, period. Like, actively helping Lulu get her eggs to reach Great Bay Temple and help the Zoras and all that. You feel the impact of that visually so much more than just, say, going over to help the Gorons and Dodongos capture, because you see the results of it. And that's so good. The only Zelda games that really get close to having a feel visually to this game are Twilight Princess and Tears. And I think this game still does it the best, if only because them having the ability to rewind time means they can have phases where you get to see things that are fixed and things that aren't. And it's so good. There are some things I'm not the biggest fan of in the game. I'm not the biggest fan of the way the moon acts as a final dungeon. I think some of the side quests feel a little weird. But it's just overall such a unique experience. No other game, I think, ever feels like this in the best way, but also the saddest way. But it's easily one of the best examples of why asset reuse is a good thing in games. Like, there's this, Tears of the Kingdom does a lot of that, and it's great for it. And the Yakuza series does that a lot, and I love it for that as well. because it allows them to focus development on the new things and make them feel all the better. And because of that, this is one of my favorite games of all time. The dungeons are great, the world's great, the soundtrack kicks ass. I love this game. But it's unfortunately a case where I can't recommend one version over another because there's a lot of things that the purist in me loves about the N64 release. But there's a lot of things that the 3DS version did, even with its weird changes, that actively make that a better experience as well. So I can't really recommend one version over the other. I guess in terms of accessibility with what's around, the N64 version is easier to get your hands on nowadays, even if the original Wii and Wii U Virtual Consoles aren't a thing anymore. But the 3DS version is probably easier to find in terms of overall copies, just because of how big the 3DS was on the whole. I adore this game, but it's definitely not for everyone, I will say that. The time system can be very overwhelming for some people, especially if you don't know about the inverse song of time, and the lack of story that takes place in the overall plot, outside of like the individual area plots, can be definitely disappointing to some, I know. But there's just so much soul in this game to me, and it feels so great. For now, let's talk about the Fierce Deity's Mask. You can only put it on in boss rooms, but it's the ultimate boss killer at a point in the game where you're not really going to need to do that unless you have to go get all the heart pieces and you want to after you've gotten all the masks. The sword is about the same strength as the Great Fairy Sword, but the magic discs it throws out whenever you're locked on are the most powerful attack you have in the game, able to kill most bosses in 1 to 2 shots. As you can see by how fast, even with the sped up footage, we're killing the final boss with it. It is great. Weird lore implications, though, behind it, as well as a lot of fan theories. And there's the outright confirmation, if that final cutscene wasn't enough, that the Skull Kid in this game is the one we played Saria's song for a heart piece for back in Ocarina. I love that part of the ending, though, just going from the wedding over to the butler crying over the corpse we saw at the start of the game, which is his son. That's the Deku Mask's body. That's just such a good way to end this game because it's such a good representation of its tone where there's a lot of hope in this, but you can't save everyone. Next time we tackle a 3D Zelda game, I'm not sure what I'm going to do. It's going to be Wind Waker probably no matter what. But I'm not sure if I'm going to tackle the GameCube release or the Wii U release, because similarly to the 3DS versus N64 argument for this or Ocarina, there's pros and cons for either. But with that, I'm going to need to end this off here. Thank you guys for watching. Have a great night. Take care. And I'll see you guys next Let's Play, whatever that may be. See you guys then.